So I wasn't really sure what kind of anthology series Amazing Stories on Apple Plus was going to be when it came out. The trailer was kind of vague about it, and the title Amazing Stories is just a little bit tricky to me. I think it is derived possibly from like some old comic books that were kind of like amazing stories. So I think it is an all-encompassing umbrella, and it's intended to be that they can tell whatever kind of stories they want. But most of the, successful anthology series I can think of have been kind of dark with twists. And the first episode of Amazing Stories, anyway, wasn't like that. So it just aired on Friday. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to avoid spoilers in the first part of this review, and then I'm going to go into spoilers in the second half, and I'll give you plenty of warnings, so don't worry about that. But the first episode was a good old-fashioned tearjerker. The setup is that there's this guy named Sam, and he's working on this house with his brother, and he goes down into the basement during a storm, and zap! He's in the past. And he finds himself falling in love with this repressed young woman named, I forget the character's name, but the actress playing the character is Victoria Pedretti, who some of you might recognize from The Haunting of Hill House. So, of course, they fall in love, and then there's time hijinks, and they're trying to get back together because twoo love. Sorry, that was a stupid joke. Anyway, they are separated and they're trying to get back together, and there's just all these obstacles in their way. So if this sounds at all familiar to you, it's because it was kind of this borrows heavily from a movie in the 80s. It was before my time. I haven't actually seen it, but I know what happens in it. And it's called Time After Time, I believe. It has Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve. And, this takes a lot of similarities from that, right down to the fact that there is a husband-to-be that is kind of is playing spoiler and trying to block the two young lovers. And, I watched this with my wife, and both of us at first were like, this is kind of cheesy. It kind of feels like something you'd see on the Hallmark Channel back in the day. I mean, I guess the Hallmark Channel still makes stuff, but it's been a really long time since I've watched anything on the Hallmark Channel. So anyway, it all turns into a pretty melodramatic tear fest by the end. And, on a scale of bad to wow, for me, it was okay, borderline good. It made my wife cry, so she clearly got very swept up in the story, even though I think if you asked her, she would tell you that she knew it was a little bit cheesy and not the best writing. But, I think that it does a really good job of just making you feel the characters' longings and their emotions, and just keeping a very tight, focused script throughout so that you almost have enough plot for a movie if they had wanted to do a movie. But that's a good place to be in for one of these shows, because you do want to feel like you've gone on a journey with characters, and it's oftentimes hard to do that in the span of one episode. But as I said, the writing was a little bit shaky. On top of borrowing from Time After Time, it borrows some elements from Titanic. And overall, I think that I'd give it a positive grade just because I felt emotional watching it, and I never really felt bored. And I think that a good deal of the credit goes to the actors Dylan O'Brien and Victoria Pedretti for just making you care about these characters and wanting them to be together, even though the writing was pretty thin. So the first episode of this was kind of a tearjerker. I don't know where they're going to go next week, but I'm planning to watch it. So if you want to see more reviews on this channel, please subscribe, and I'll have those out hopefully on Friday next week. So look forward to that. Now, for those of you who don't mind spoilers or who've already seen it, I'm going to go ahead and do the spoilers now. So X out of the video if you don't want spoilers. All right, you've been warned. So I feel like I personally would not have wrapped this episode up the way that they chose to. I think that it was sad, but it was kind of sad in an unnecessary way, because the two characters were just kind of the victims of fate, and they didn't really have any say in what happened to them. I think they tried to make it seem like it wasn't sad, But to me, they just never convinced me that there was anything satisfying about the ending. So essentially, I'll try to do this as briefly as possible. A lot more than this happens, but I'll just say the succinct synopsis is that they end up separated, her in the future and him in the past, and they can never get back together. And he leaves her letters in the wall of the house that they were in 1919, and she finds them in the present. And I was unclear on this. Maybe someone can tell me in the comments section if they know the answer to this, but I felt like they were saying that the child, because the woman who ends up in the future ends up having a child, I felt like they were saying the child was their child, but this was a TV PG show, so there was no sex whatsoever. So, it was kind of unclear to me whether they could have had a child or not, but they didn't show her with a husband or with anyone else, so I assumed it was their child. I mean, it seems kind of weird to me that she would name the child Sam after him if she had a different husband. Like, I'm naming the child Sam. Why? I'm just really attached to that name. It's nothing you need to worry about. It's really your child, I promise. Anyway, but to me, I think that a better ending would have been to make you think that he got trapped in the past and that they were separated forever, and then to have her be in the house at the end and then have her hear a noise or something and then turn around and then her face light up and then go to black, so that we never actually see them reunite, because that would be too saccharine. But to have that kind of ambiguous optimism, I feel like that would have been a better way to go. But I get what they were going for. It got my wife crying, which admittedly isn't the hardest thing in the world to do, but it almost had me crying. I'll admit it. I'm soft-hearted too, but I feel like it was unnecessarily sad. It was, melodramatic. That's the obvious word. But what did you think? Did you think that the sad ending was the way to go? Are you interested in seeing more episodes of this show? Did you watch the original show when it aired? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you like what I'm doing, as I said before, please subscribe. So that's Plot First's review of Amazing Stories, Episode 1, The Cellar.